Hey guys, Butt Poop here, and today I want to discuss my League Start plans. Just to quickly get out of the way, it's going to be Rolling Magma cast on crit. Rolling Magma is going to be really powerful with Saboteur's random direction ascendancy, as discussed in my last video, using Nimby to simulate that. I've been testing this over the past 3 days, and my conclusions kind of were, well, all the different kind of cast and crit setups you can do just kind of feel good, so it's kind of just preference. My PoB has 3 different versions, and I kind of waffled back and forth between all of them. And I ended up landing on Cyclone, weirdly enough, which is a skill that I very frequently criticize for going cast and crit because it's kind of from a bygone era. Like Lancing Steel and Blast Rain both let you double cock and quad cock even, just because their fire rate is set, so you get to trigger 2 spells without downside. Then you don't have to balance your attack speed like you do with Cyclone, and you don't have to be on top of the mobs. It's like all these other things, right? To make Cyclone kind of just feel not good in the current version of PoE compared to those skills. But I'll quickly make my case for why I'm actually going Cyclone, but you obviously can do Lancing Steel or Blast Rain with very minimal changes. But so the reason for that is when you have to take random directions like this, you get in this really awkward spot where like Lancing Steel I think is just generally the best because you get shield charge and you can do it from a distance and like a pretty far distance. But the really awkward thing is your projectiles fire in complete random directions. So this means that for a single target, you can no longer do this from a distance because your damage will be terrible. You have to stand directly on top of the boss. Clearing this will be fine, but if you have to stand directly on top of the boss, it defeats one of the massive benefits of Lancing Steel. And on top of that, Rolling Magma has an absurd amount of damage on this kind of setup, to like 1600 to 2000 plus effectiveness out of damage. And there is no skill in the game that approaches that outside of something like Vortex of Projection with all 5 hits, but then you need to include Frostbolt, GMP, and Slower Proj in your build, or like some Corpse skills, but then you need to include like Corpse plus Spell Cascade. So essentially, to get another skill that's like even close to this, you'd have to jump through so many more hoops that you generally aren't going to be double spelling on Lancing Steel with this or Blast Rain with this. So Cyclone is a lot closer than it would normally be. Blast Rain is going to be more damage than Cyclone because you still get that Mana Forge cast and crit setup as well. And one of the nice things about Blast Rain is you do get that distance, even with random directions. It is not bricked by that random direction mod. It lets you fire wherever you want, so you can safely attack from a distance and cast and crit. And then your Skitterbots will stay on the boss, so the Rolling Magmas will be right close to him and just chain. But then you lose, shield charge. So, anyways, the other thing with Cyclone that is actually a pretty big benefit, especially early on, that the other options don't get is 2 parts. Basically, just base crit in 2 different forms. So you get to use like something like a dagger. With daggers have insane base crit, so you can get like a 10 base crit weapon where like a spine bow you're going to up with like 8.2. So this is just like 2 base crit higher. That, or even oscillating scepter later for Secrets of Suffering if you want to do that. But you also get really consistent uptime on brittle ground because with Cyclone you literally have to stand on top of the mob to deal damage. So you're just like dropping this brittle ground that is just going to be under them, and then we path by all this increased elemental damage. Well, really just elemental focus. And then I even anoint Leadership's Price to make this like brittle ground be like around, I don't know, it's like, I think it's like 4 base crit or something, with cluster jewels and just stuff like that, stacking non-damaging element effect, right? So you end up with like 4 base crit to Rolling Magma by doing this. And what's awesome about that is Rolling Magma has a terrible base crit. Like 5 base crit is very difficult to overcome. Like later on you have like absurd options, like expensive things like a Sandstorm Visage if you're like playing like a miner, or just not playing cast on crit because it says you can't crit with attacks. But that plus the Prophecy one gives you just like set the base crit this thing like 13. So that's another way to handle it. Much more expensive later on, where Brittle Ground shouldn't be too difficult to acquire early. And obviously just a base crit dagger. This is just crafted crit chance. This is the maximum roll you can get, or this is like not even the maximum roll, it goes up 27. But later on, kind of regardless of what you do, especially I think if you go bow, because you're not going to have this brittle ground, you can do things like Leadership's Price. This is a fantastic way to fix the base crit of Rolling Magma and your cast and crit enabler, which in that case would be like Blast Rain, or Lancing Steel would also be a good option for this as well. Just because you're not going to be directly on top of everything all the time. I guess you are when you're single targeting, for Lancing Steel at least. But anyways, so you get your brittle that way. You do have to balance your resistances, which is quite annoying. But the other thing that is really nice about this is this mastery, the hits have 25% chance to treat enemy monster elemental resistance as averted, is being nerfed in the upcoming patch. This is still going to be very good, but it does make resistance lowering curses and things like Scorch going to be just like a little bit better than they have been previously, just comparatively, right? So what I end up liking to do is eventually, like normally I'll start out with Doedri's Damning, and I'll just craft this. This is Unveil. I don't know where this craft's going to be going forward because Unveil system has changed. But I generally like to put all my curses in here, and then things like Wave of Conviction and Flame Wall and all that stuff. Hell, you can even put your sigil power in there if you want to do that, so that when you're bossing, you don't have to spam buttons. I just go to the boss, place my sigil power, focus, and then start attacking. And then thankfully the curses last like 10 seconds, so focus will be back up by the time those are wearing off. Flame Wall is not going to last nearly as long. Sometimes I put more duration there with that, but anyways. Yeah, that's kind of generally the setup I do. And then eventually Anathema, more curses in here. Just scale tons of damage that way. Anathema's a really fucked up item, but anyways. So that's pretty much just like the high level of why I'm going Cyclone, and then just other bullshit because I cannot seem to stay focused on the task at hand. If you're going Lancing Steel, one nice thing that's like kind of cool, I guess, but it's also kind of difficult. So like when I'm going like, if I was going like Mines, Belt Timber Blade is actually just like kind of a decent weapon early, because with Rolling Magma, if you want to get your maximum hits, you want to use something like Volley. Volley because it has a smaller, less damage penalty than LMP. But so if you're using a movement skill, you will fire 2 additional projectiles, so it gets you a socket back. That's all your weapon's going to do, so eventually you want to have something better. But it's just something kind of nice to use early on. I was considering using it on Lancing Steel Spraying, Cast on Crit. It is pretty tough though without, after mentioned like brittle stuff, because the base crit on this is 5, which is quite low. It's kind of nice if you have like leaderships or brittle ground, but it's like by that point, if you have this, I think you would be doing much better than a Belt Timber Blade at that point. Like you probably have a pretty fat like foil. Not this one. This is like a starting foil, but this is the other option for that if you're doing Lancing Steel Spraying. Batter Foil, just because it has the highest attack speed, you can get it at level 12. You just hit it with an Essence of Woe. Ideally until you get attack speed, but otherwise just craft crit chance on it and be done. You can make a much better one multi-bond later with hits can't be evaded, but that's like a good starting one. And then it'll be the same exact thing for creating an early cast on crit spine bow. Just gonna be Essence of Woe, and then crafted crit chance. Now, early items that I would like to look for are Kong Wings, just really good on Sabo because he has that guarantee blind. So this is just gonna be 30% reduced hell damage taken, which is just a shit ton. It's a decent amount of ES too, which I generally like to go ES Leech over here with Ghost Dance, because you're just in that part of the tree where you have a ton of evasion, then you can come get Wind Dancer. It creates a nice little tanky shell. The other thing I like is Combs Binding. I really like to have like a really fat, I don't have one on, Necrotic Armor early on to have like this Life ES hybrid build, rolling up with like 4,500 life and then like 2,000 plus ES. And then since I have ES Leech and I'll be taking Instant Leech to sustain my cast and crit skills, it makes it really good for maintaining that massive ES pool as well. Now, because of that, I'm getting a lot less Fizz taken as. I can't use something like Lightning Coil, and because I want to use Kong Mings, I can't use Dawnbreaker. So we lose a lot of good sources of Fizz taken as, which is really important on this like side of the tree, right? Because you just have bad Fizz mitigation without like mid-endurance charges, which I plan to get on rings. So Combs Binding kind of just makes a lot of sense because this does not stack additively with damage taken as. It makes them like 25, like this amount will make them 75% as good as they normally be. Like if you get a 10% taken as on like your Necrotic Armor, it's going to be like 7.5 taken as essentially. And then same value with the helm, it'll be like 6%. And then, God, I don't know what that meant. 4.5 taken as, which makes it a lot weaker. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm going. And then the other thing that I have, like I have multiple versions of this in the PoB that I'm going to go over in a minute. But you can do, and you guys are probably really sick of this, so I chill. Pyroclast minus Sabotage for single target if you would really like to. You do need to come over to the Mind Duration wheel here and then get Minds Cannot Be Damaged if you want it to be consistently uptime. This will multiply your damage by anywhere from like 4 to 5 times, so it is obscene if you are doing like wanting to do Ubers early or something that like you really need single target. It's a good consideration to have. Otherwise, I like the Sigil Power because it's just like a low, it's just less annoying, I guess, because it doesn't require the tree pathing. It's just a single button, and then I can even put it in my focus helm if I want to. But this will give you giga damage if you need it early on. So something to consider. Pretty much always consider it, especially if I start doing Ubers. I will do something like this, just because there's no other way to push that level of damage. Like my decent budget cast on crit build is like 20+ million damage, but my one with Pyroclast is like 80. So you know it's kind of hard to actually beat Pyroclast. You don't have to use Martial Legion. You could have like +4 Duedries as well, but it'd be ideal if you got an evasion base with like +4 on them, so you could actually keep the suppression mastery here without losing that. because that's always one of the annoying things about this. If you use these, you have to path to more suppression, and you're already like losing points because you have to path down here. So it squeezes your tree pretty tight. Now, other things I should probably mention, regardless of this build, well, I guess in this exact instance, if you do go Pyroclast, you are not going to be able to get like clockwork, which is totally fine. Normally on Castle and Crit, you want to get 14% cooldown recovery speed somewhere. The easiest place is belts because the veiled cooldown recovery mod is 13 to 16%. The lowest shaper in Crusader one is 10 to 15 as well. What I have here. So you're going to need to get that because that will get you to that 7.5 trigger breakpoint. You don't need to worry about your APS for Blast Rain or Lancing Steel, really. It's going to be really hard not to hit that. Cyclone, you need to make sure you stay under 7.5 or exactly at it, which can be pretty annoying. Like if you're using a dagger, there's efficient sources of attack speed that are like also good. Like this dagger wheel is good because this master gives you culling, so it's kind of fine. And then you can also just opt for this accuracy wheel over this one if you're don't have enough attack speed and stuff like that. So it's like, and then just pick it up on jewels where you can. That's why I like to have like this attack speed mod on this dagger is actually like way too high. It kind of makes it hard to balance. But ideally, and this is just rolling magma in general, kind of whatever you play. And this is one of the things that's going to be annoying about leadership's price. If you go with that and you're like bow or something, you ideally get level 21 rolling magma because at 2020 right here, and quality on this is really important. If you're playing this build in Merc Lab, farm pure 20 quality. I know it sucks, but the chains are a shit ton of damage. I am going to recommend that you get like +1 pretty much anywhere. If you have to go get like a shitty wand, if you're playing like Mines or Spellslinger or something like that, you really want +1 because at +1 it gets one more chain, which is a lot of damage. So you ideally get 21-20, and you don't want a 21-0. Like you need the quality because if you have a 21-0, it's just 4 chains, where 20-20 is just better. It's 5. So you can get it on a shield as well. Pure ES shields can get +1. Amulets can get +1. Wands can get +1. Rune daggers can get +1. Scepters, etc., etc. And then obviously corrupting it later on. I think early on, it's going to be a little annoying if you're playing specifically Cyclone because you don't have super good sources of leech. So you'll get a decent amount from your tree, but you need to have like consistently enough flat to actually get a decent amount of leech out of that. So I would ideally like to get some on Doriani's Lesson. Now when you're single targeting, this isn't going to come up because if you're single targeting, you're either going to be using something like this, Sigil of Power, or even like Anger helps a little bit. You need to have enough hit damage so that you properly leech, because if you're on top of stuff, you really want your sustain to be decent. Why I'm going to be using this, I'm going to be using Flesh and Stone, because enemies near me, it's going to reduce the fizz damage, and then, you know, obviously I'll try to get endurance charges on kill and all that stuff, but just something to keep in mind. Eventually, when you get a Vitality Watcher's Eye, which you pretty much are always going to try to look for eventually on a Cast and Crit build, it's going to give you like 20 to 30 life gain on spell hit per thing you hit, which is just, if your rolling magma on average is hitting 6 to 7 times, that is going to add up very quickly, and your cyclone's hitting, you know, X amount of times. Blast Rain's even more with it, because it's like you're double cocking with all that, and then Blast Rain hits 7 times. Yeah, anyways, it's going to make it so like you essentially can't die if you don't get one shot while you're attacking, which is a really good feeling. I want to say that is mostly it. I will discuss leveling. I have not really had like a super solid plan on how I want to do it, and I'm not going to include a leveling section. And the reason for that is because I'm going to wing it with Spellslinger. I don't know how that is going to feel, and I don't know any problems I'm going to run into with that. I haven't got to play with Spellslinger in forever, and I really want to level with it, whether it is efficient or not. I think in general, top side of the tree builds are very likely to just be, it's likely to be really good to just level as Spellslinger regardless, because you get this Wand Mastery, which gives you a ton. And then now that Spellslinger is 20 reservation at all levels, you can sling like 6 to 8 spells like immediately when you get the gem. I will say back when we used to level a Spellslinger, if you guys remember, we didn't have to pay the mana on the skills. But now you probably need to hit EB. You can try to do like Arrogance Clarity or something early on, but I don't think that's realistic. I think Elementalist maybe could get away with it with a Golem effect. On which one is it? Is it a Lightning Golem that gives a flat mana regen? Maybe that'd be good enough. But on Elementalist, I'm going to be trying to sling like Fizz skills, and then take that Herald node first for to scale my Herald of Purity and Herald Ash, because that's just going to be huge damage. And there's a lot of good Fizz skills to sling. So, but yeah, I'm going to include my like my like 28 tree that I'm going to try. I'm going to be slinging Rolling Magma, Flame Wall, Desecrate, Wave of Conviction, and Krima. Pretty sure. I think Ice Spear with the Krima as well, because it's going to be LMP. Yeah. But it's a lot. You can fit a fuck ton. You'd be shocked, but you do need to race EV, so we'll see how that feels. Now, what I think the safest thing to level as, and I'm going to include a link to his video because I think Grotha posted one yesterday. He is going to be doing Rolling Magma Mines, which is another version I explored of this, and also feels very good. I think all the Rolling Magma builds, honestly, are just going to feel incredible. So I don't think you can really go wrong. Kind of just which playstyle suits you the best. Like, in fact, I'm probably going to level as Spellslinger until my damage starts to feel ass. If my damage starts to feel really bad, my plan is to transition into Mines until I can switch to Cast and Crit, because I'm not going to be able to switch to Cast and Crit ideally. Like, I personally won't do it until I get Elrion Craft, which I don't know where that is. I don't know if GG has said where that, what map tier that's going to be in. So when I have that, I can consider switching. But before switching, you need to be like accuracy capped. You need to have Elrion. You need to have your APS sorted if you go Cyclone. You need to have sufficient leech, generally like something like this and this. Probably not this early on when your Rolling Magma doesn't cost a ton of mana and you're not on a 6-link yet, but you can cheese it pretty early if you really want to with like an Essence of Horror if you go into those, because you can make 3.5 plus base crit. So you just have like Cyclone, Cast and Crit, Rolling Magma, increase critical strikes, and then you're just like popping off. But honestly, I don't even think that'd be worth it because you really, really want at least volley. So it's going to be really hard to switch to this before you have like a 5-link, honestly, even a 6-link, because you're going to be Enabler, Cast and Crit, Rolling Magma, volley, and then you generally want to increase critical strikes because early on your crit's just not very good. But then you're generally going to need inspiration to sustain your mana. So it's tough. It's tough to do earlier than a 6-link, but I don't know that I'm going to do that or recommend it, honestly. But if I'm sure Grotha is literally one of the best build makers in the entire game, or like in the entire like community, if not like just the best. That guy's incredible. So if you want to level as Mines, I would definitely use him as a resource and follow his guide. I'm sure it's fantastic. Honestly, you can also wing it with Spellslinger with me, which sounds more fun, but definitely higher risk. It might brick, but I mean, honestly, with gold for respecking, I'm not super worried about any leveling strategy being too bad, just because if it really, really gets too bad, you could just patch your problems where it's like currently you run out of regrets if you fuck up your build too bad, but now I don't even think that's a problem. All right, I'm going to quickly discuss the PoB because I have multiple drop down here and I want to explain gearing choices and stuff like that and things that I consider important. So this first drop down here, the Cyclone one, is what I would plan on switching to right when you switch to Cast and Crit if you're planning on going Cyclone. Not that much difference if you are going Lengthening Steel or Blast Rain, but I have different drop downs for those kind of versions. Like here's my Cyclone, like early Cyclone one. Here's my early Lancing Steel one. Here's my early Blast Rain one. It's the Rolling Magma only one. This weird one is including Vortex of Projection because I was thinking, well, if I'm destroying the projectile speed anyway, with this, I get to use, I could just do like a quad cock Blast Rain setup and then use Vortex Projection to get all 5 hits because as I discussed in my trigger video, it's really easy to do that once you take these and have a bunch of AoE, which we have a bunch of AoE. It's kind of like made the perfect storm, but it's actually ended up being a little too complicated to fit everything, surprisingly. Or I'd say unsurprisingly. Anyways, so I would plan on leveling, and this is entirely why I was going to say if you want to level as Mines, I think that probably makes the most sense, and I would very much trust Grotha on that. So if you want to look at his guide, I'll include the link in the show notes. But I'm going to wing it with Spellslinger. This is what my initial tree at 28 is going to look like when I switch. I have to be this level to get enough reservation and to have Eldritch Battery. I'm going to slowly get this mastery, like a level 30. It's just based on my tree. This is what I'm... It might have to actually take like one of these too, so it might be like 31 or something when I actually get that. But the point being, this is the skills I'm going to use, and you don't have to use these. You get a spell sling, whatever the hell you want. This just makes sense to me. Spell sling, wave of conviction, flame wall. That's great. So like I have one spell slinger that's all utility. So I'm going to put some corpses down, put a flame wall down, and put wave of conviction for exposure. And then I'm going to spell sling rolling magma, which is going to go through the flame wall, and LA Prolif to actually spread some ignites, help her clear a little bit. And then I have spell slinger, LMP, Ice Spear plus Crema. It can be anything you want. You don't have to do this. This seemed kind of nice for single target. This is like my single target option. This is my like clear. But as you can see, you can sling a ton of shit. So it's really up to you. Now, going over the Cyclone PoB really quick. The high level notes is at least +1 gem somewhere, +1 fire somewhere. So that Rolling Magma gets that +1 chain, as I discussed. As you can see, it's chained 6 times here because it's level 22. If I didn't down to 18, it's just because I have +2 in gear. It will just chain once, but then exactly when you get 1, it's chain 6. So that is important to get. You can get it on a shield, like a pure int shield. You can get it on a Skeen, Scepter, you know, like it's pretty much any weapon base, any caster weapon base, pure ES shield, or any rare amulet would be enough. Obviously, you can corrupt it too, but again, you want a 2020 Rolling Magma, so it would have to be a 2120 Rolling Magma. Something that's pretty important early on is, at least before you're crit capped, is brittle boots. You try to get those as soon as humanly possible, because if you look here, my Rolling Magma base crit is almost capped here. If I take these off, 60%. So I'm getting literally 35% more damage from brittle boots. Before that point, before you have brittle boots, which, because that's not going to be like super early if you try to switch to cast and crit super soon, just use increased critical strikes. It's not going to be good here, obviously, because I've already solved it with the brittle boots, but that's something you can use instead. Inspiration, obviously, because of the mana costs, because we are actually trying to sustain the mana and not using Eldritch Battery, because I want to have a big ES hit pool for like our hybrid life, because we get Ghost Dance and we get Leech from it, so it just turns in this whole thing. This ES Leech is actually going to be quite a bit higher, because PoB is not calculating that Rolling Magma was hitting 6 times, so it should be much higher than this. You need volley in your links for multiple hits, obviously, like I discussed earlier. Other gearing things, early I would like to use a Kungan Stratagem. Actually, if anything, it's kind of hard to switch off of this, like even later. It's just so good for your mitigation, but you certainly can. And like I was mentioning, that ends up making me use Combs Binding, because I can't use like a Lightning Coil or Dawnbreaker. My Fizz mitigation is bad because of that, so Combs Binding is a nice way to solve that. And we're light on strength, so it kind of solves all those problems at once. Doerger's Jamming for damage, obviously. Nice to get one with high resistance, because this build doesn't use a lot of uniques, but we don't path through any uniques either, so you actually do need like big sources of resistance are actually kind of nice for you. I'm going to take a Lyra early. I always do. I would always recommend taking a Lyra on your first character. Oh yeah, Focus Helm, like I mentioned, just put all your curses in here. So the actual tree is pretty straightforward, like at least my like early one. The only thing that I'm doing here that is weird, because that I'm not used to doing, like at least lately, is with Lance of Steel and Blaster, you don't really need to juggle your attack speed very much. Blaster you do a little bit, because it doesn't quite have the hit rate of like something like Spraying, but so I need to keep this APS under 7.5 if you have the cooldown node like Clockwork, or you have a belt with at least 14% cooldown. Otherwise, it's 6 triggers a second. Oh, sorry, belt here. I have multiple options, just like a unveiled one with like 16 or like 13 to 16. So you need to get to 14 or higher. If you aren't taking like Clockwork, like if you were trying to use Pirate class, mine's Sabotage for a single target. So I'm taking this attack speed here to try to balance this. You can always get more on your dagger. Like my dagger has just crafted attack speed +1. That's pretty much the only thing that matters. And then that crit chance. If you did have more attack speed on your dagger, you wouldn't want to take this. Or if you had less attack speed on your dagger, you would want to, instead of doing this crit wheel, or this accuracy wheel, you would do this accuracy wheel with attack speed. Just essentially try to balance around 7.5 for your Cyclone. One thing you can use to like balance it a little bit easier is just varying the level of your blood rage. Like as you'll see, like I do that quite a bit, just because it's more easy to juggle the levels of your blood rage a lot of times than it is to juggle your gear or tree. So but again, with Cyclone, something very, very, very important to keep in mind. These nodes look deceptively strong once you have brittle, just because it scales the brittle effect as well as this. This like all of the non-damaging ailment effects you can get is very good. Before you have Secrets of Suffering, or was it Leadership Price, this node is not very good, because our brittle is not coming from a crit. It is literally just getting dropped from our boots, so this will not scale that. So normally this is really great for non-damaging elements effects, but in this case it will not be. So that's why I do not have that taken. Unfortunately, I do have to come down here to get Leech, because as you'll see, Rolling Magma, our mana cost is 316 a second, because Sabo's Trigger Bots makes it the cost of it double. So you do need quite a bit of mana on Sabo builds, or like mana leech on Sabo builds, because you literally have to double pay the cost twice, because triggers twice. So I take instant leech up here, and then I take more to even increase my maximum amount of leech here. You technically don't need this if you get enough mana, but it is kind of hard based on the gear that we have. We don't have that many any spots to actually get flat mana on. So this is generally what I would end up doing. You can certainly cut out this part of the tree if you would like. I just like the life early on, because before I have like jewels to actually do that, and then cluster jewels, which constrains my points further. But initially I was coming down here for this, because as I discussed many times with Rolling Magma, lowering the prod speed makes it way more likely to get more hits in single target scenarios. For my testing on bosses, it seems like by the time that ramp happens, a lot of the bosses would phase, and you wouldn't get all your hits anyway, because it spreads it out over multiple seconds. It is technically more damage, so if you're doing like something like Ubers or something, you do probably want to actually take this. Where if something that like you can really hit a bunch, it's probably is ideal to actually get this, if not including slower proj in your links. Choice is up to you. I'm definitely not going to be mapping the slower proj or adjacent animosity plus the less proj free mastery, because it felt quite bad from my experience. Just like the clear, it just did not feel nearly as good as without it. So that is my my whole thoughts of that. I do think it is strong. I'm not going to be using it for all those reasons. So unless, like I said, if I'm doing Ubers, I definitely will. But I'm coming up here. I don't love this travel. This is not great, especially later on. But you do need sufficient AOE to actually get the overlaps in Rolling Magma. Sab gives you, it's so toxic. They have prod speed on this, but it used to be every minor node on Sab was AOE. So this one is different now, I guess. Anyways, yeah, so he gets a little bit less AOE now. But anyways, you want to get at least like this amount. You can get some more in gear if you want, but it'll increase the two vectors for increasing, or the 3 vectors for increasing Rolling Magma hit count is so obviously chain count, projectile count, and then AOE. And then I guess it's 4 because it's projectile speed as well. So all of those. But yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward for like the actual like gear that I'll be switching to early. I will say that I think realistically, it's going to be really difficult to switch to Rolling Magma Cast and Crit before 6 link on this, just because you actually have so many required things you need with it. So like you want Rolling Magma Cast and Crit Cyclone, so that, and then Volley. Otherwise, your damage is going to be not very good. So you have these guaranteed. And then early on, you're definitely going to need increased critical strikes over anything. And then if you do that, you'll see the mana cost is pretty unreasonable. So it's like if you want to switch to cast and crit, oh, I didn't mean to click that. Mana cost is like pretty unreasonable without inspiration. Now you could go EB early, but that is going to make you so squishy. But you definitely can if you want to switch earlier than like rather than later. So I totally understand that. I like switching the build. I want to play as soon as possible too. But so it's kind of tough to do it on a five link. You certainly can. It might be a little sketchy. Less so if you have more non-channeling sources. Like if you do switch to Rolling Magma around then and you want to do it as soon as humanly possible without inspiration, you're probably just not going to use it to Edger's Damning. Just use an extra Elrion Ring with the -7 mana cost. That'll make it much more bearable. Okay, so going on to like progression after this, because this gear, like I said, is pretty straightforward. Just want a fat ES evasion chest, life suppression gear everywhere. Do Edger's just really good damage early. And then generally you're always going to want on build like this where you hit a lot. You're going to always want something like this, a Doctor's Diamond Flask, which is just a chance to gain a flash charge and crit, and increased critical strike chance during effect. The reason for this is there is a 0.1 millisecond cooldown on this. So you generally can keep up like 1 to 2 of these kind of flasks if you that's all you have. If you have more than that, they get spread out between them and you won't keep them up. So you can also take the flash charge and crit node here as well, which I frequently end up taking. Yes, 25% chance here. That will spread it across your flask, which means you won't have the 2 that you want up all the time, but you will have somewhat decent uptime on a lot of your flasks. Not quite, obviously not quite Pathfindery, but okay. So going on to like a progression. So this is my Cyclone Part 2 version, which is just like higher investment. It's like a multi-modded Skeen with hits can't be evaded, so we no longer need accuracy. Nothing super crazy there, just better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's, you know. This is the least important thing, Corruption and Condoms. There's a billion good ones you can get on it. Helmet, just literally more life, more ES, and that's pretty much it. Still want the trigger craft, because if anything, now that we have Anathema on this setup, we are putting another curse in here. We can do Elemental Weakness, Flammability, Punishment, and then Flame Wall you can drop if you want, but it is a nice amount of damage. The problem is Flame Wall's duration is not super long, so if you're deleting things though, which by the time you have this gear you probably should be. So by the time this falls off, the thing should be dead regardless. And then just better necrotic with implicits. Even though I'm using Comb's Binding, I still think the Fizz taken as is worth doing. Our Fizz mitigation is still quite poor without multiple sources of things like this. With Comb's Binding, I think it just sets the math to, because I have that noted on here. It says does not stack with taken as, because it works with taken as, but it's not well. It's like if you have Comb's Binding, the monster is already going to deal 75% of their damage as physical as opposed to 100%. So it essentially makes damage taken as values with 25% of their damage converted. It is going to take the remaining amount and multiply it. So like this is 10% taken as, so now it's going to be 10 times 0.75. So it's easy math there. 7.5 damage taken as fire, but still again Our phys mitigation is poor, so I still think it's worth doing. But yeah, I opt for mana reservation here over Taken S because again, it's worse. And you get into the spot where like when you trigger your focus stuff and like when you first start triggering before your leech like really kicks in, that you can almost bottom out your mana. And with fitting in Flesh and Stone, I like to have just like a little bit extra over here, so that's why I have that reservation there. And then we switch off Dowager's Tenure so we can get the Suppression Mastery. We want a pair of Evasion Gloves. This Unveiled increased damage for Leeching mod is very good. It's like, you know, 6/10 or whatever the damage of Dowager's Tenure. It doesn't need to be unveiled. The normal mod is still quite good. It's like 32% increased damage or something like that. But we get double damage implicit here, and some suppress and life from the gloves. So this slot is like really, really sick if you can get like a decent pair of these, because a nerve is 10% increased damage taken, and then fire exposure is means we don't need to have wave of conviction or helmet, which means we can easily put another curse in there and freeze up a whole bunch of stuff. You can technically get exposure on a large LA cluster jewel or fire one as well. It is corrosive elements, I believe is what it's called, or in a fire one, I think it's just nearby enemies have fire exposure, but I can't remember the name. Generic exposure is a little bit better, I guess, just because corrosive elements means like if we use sigil power for single target, it'll be easier to actually get that too. But okay, anyways, I like lightning exposure in addition. Amulet, I have a little bit of mana here to help with mana leech. It's nice to have this on some of your gear, just like not everywhere, but just like a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, it just makes leeching a little bit easier. Like if I can't just remove the mana, it'd be slow, but it'd make my mana leech a little bit worse if I don't have at least one slot that has flat mana on it. I think I would be under, because I think we're like right at, it's 370, and then our cost here is like 380. Yeah, so you want a little bit of mana somewhere. Ring, just a little bit better. I want a veiled endurance charge and kill mod. You can craft minimum endurance charges on this, but the problem is you want to be able to craft minus mana cost, so you want it to come with that. And the nice thing about that is it gives you endurance charges on kill, so that when you're mapping, you have max endurance charges. So I'm getting Doriani's lesson here on the traveling, because it'll just make your, again, it's not going to really show this in PoB as well, because it's not showing the multi-hitting on, because it's going to, like, so we have some leech from our cyclone, right? But with rolling magma, it's going to be hitting like 6+ times. So this alongside instant leech is going to be closer to like 2,000. So PoB is not going to really show this, but I can assure you this is quite good for your sustain. And then I'm actually using at least one non-damaging ailment effect cluster jewel to scale the brittle effect, as you see here. Look at how much crit this actually gives us. It's actually insane. This mod is literally that dot damage over time does nothing, but increased cold effect of cold ailments directly scales our brittle, so it makes this really, really good, notable for us. And then same here, same thing again, just minor increased effect on non-damaging elements. It's kind of goofy that these are good, but anybody who remembers back when brittle was in its heyday, when it had 15 base crit, this was like you would stack this kind of effect all over the place. And then for the other cluster jewel, it's going to be basics of pain plus pressure points, crit one or projectile one. The projectile one gives you eye to eye, which is always going to be true for things you are killing. Like early boss wise, projectiles will always be near you, because the idea is that they're going to bounce back and forth on top of the enemy. So it's just a shit ton of damage. This is going to show higher damage in PoB than it actually is in game, because the damage is going to fall off as the rolling magma chains more, but this is still going to be more damage than like any other notable you could get. The crit one is going to be a little bit less than this, like a basic pain pressure point. But if you're under crit cap, it is kind of nice. And in general, it might be a little bit better, because when you're mapping, you are not always going to have things up like, for example, like Assassin's Mark and just things like that. It's just going to be like you're going to be slightly under. So sometimes it can feel better to just like hard crit cap and then just use a crit one over this. I am using Secrets of Suffering to get Scorches on my Rolling Magma, because we are resistance lowering with Anathema and a bunch of curses. So that is just a really good way to add a bunch of damage. As you see here, our Scorch effect is 22%. So that means we are lowering resistance by 22%, which is quite a lot. And with the minor, this doesn't really cost anything. It just costs a small cluster jewel. Later on, you could consider switching to Leadership's Price, like I was discussing earlier, because that'll make it so you don't need brittle boots anymore. All your rolling magma damage can sap, chill, and brittle. Just kind of gives you that all in one package. You have to balance your attributes, which is really not that complicated. This build just happens to be between int and dex quite evenly. So you just need like right here, just need like a int node, and then you can use tattoos to like destroy a stat to make it balance. You only need the top two to match, which will be in this case dex and int. And then I think honestly that's mostly it outside of the Watcher's Eye, but I've touched on this in like every single video, but it's cast and crit. Eventually, if you can, you will always want to get a life gain on hit Vitalis Watcher's Eye. This skill is hitting Rolling Magma alone is hitting 6 times per trigger, and then your Cyclone is hitting a bunch. This will be thousands of life a second on top of your leech. It will mean that if something is not one-shotting you, it's not killing you. So very good to pick up if you can. Grace Evade is a nice to have, but I consider Vitality much more important. That Grace Evade just adds that flat evasion percent onto whatever you have. As you can see here, this is adding 7 to the top. And then that'll make things like Wind Dancer like really, really good because we're just not going to get hit by attacks. So now, if you're doing like Ubers, like I was mentioning, you certainly can switch to this version. I need to fix this to come down to the mind nodes, like I was saying earlier. But with this level of damage, it's possible you don't need it. But I still think it feels kind of uncomfortable just to have 5 seconds to burst something down, even with giga damage, because it's just kind of nice to have the mines cannot be damaged here and like the duration, so that if they do an AoE attack when you're like bursting them down, your damage doesn't just like fall off the face of the earth, right? But the idea with this is this one you would want to go. Okay, I need to fix this version, but on this version I was planning on going leadership's price because I need to drop. Oh right. Okay, sorry. I was planning on dropping for March of the Legion, which you certainly can do. If you're using March of the Legion, you probably want to use Doge. You probably want to use leadership's price so that you can get your brittle and your scorch there, and then you don't need to have Secrets of Suffering here, because you obviously have to lose brittle ground. What I ended up doing is getting like a pair of like +4 Doedries, which does work too. It's going to be slightly worse than March of the Legion, but that way you don't have to lose brittle and you don't have to lose leadership's price if you want to do that route. So that's kind of just a choice. There's multiple options here for putting power class. Power class essentially just needs to be in like a high gem level gear. It could be like +3 helmet, but I would prefer not to do that because I want to put my curses in there. So essentially, gloves and boots are like the free slot. And then rare gloves are harder to do that on now because they got rid of the +proj level and +AoE unveil, which is what I always look for with these like early in SSF. So yeah, I get fucked, I guess. But yeah, there's actually not much different outside of this other than you actually coming here for the mine effect as opposed to the CDR. And what that means is you need to get, and when I say you need to, hitting the 10 APS breakpoint if you're trying to do Ubers on like a power class mine setup version of this is not super necessary because your damage is going to be quite high already. Like it's going to be like in the 60 million versus like the 80. It's like, I don't know that you need this much more, but if you did, you would need to get the unveil from things like I have a big unveil, like max roll unveil mod here. But if you have more of a budget, you could get something even crazy like a Stygian Vice with a CDR, Abyssal Jewel, because this alone right here is 23 in me, and that alongside 30 hits that 52 breakpoint. So you actually don't even need a max roll Abyssal Jewel here, or this could be 19, some combination of that. But point being, you need to actually get the CDR on your gears somewhere. But yeah, as you can see right here, I have 16 for my belt, and then I have 6 for my boot, the Eater implicit, Eldritch implicit, and then I have 31 from an Awakened Cast on crit, which is going to make it way easier to like actually hit your. Oh yeah, see, I actually didn't touch on this on the part 2 one. Is the same. You need to get cooldown recovery speed somewhere if you want to hit that 10 APS. And the easiest way, especially if you're in softcore trade, is going to be buying an Awakened Cast on crit, or maybe farm yourself. But as you can see, it's got 16% CDR there at level 3, and it keeps getting 3% every level. And you can get it an even another level if you do this +3 to all crit support gems, because that's +9 CDR if you have Awakened Cock. So that frees up more gear, frees up your ascendancy kind of thing. So I want to say that is everything. If you want to wing it with Spellslinger with me, that'll be fun. I hope that works out. I know early on it's going to be good leveling. I'm more a little concerned about taking like a Spellslinger setup to like past my first 2 watchstones, because I even assumed the first 2 watchstones will be relatively fine, but maybe much past that it'll be a little bit of a struggle. But ideally by then, because I'm going to be in like the mid 80s by the time I'm done with my 2nd watchstone anyway, so I'll be looking to start transitioning to cast on credit regardless. So, but like I said, if it's bad, I'll just switch to mines. Hopefully I don't have to. Mines are fine. It's just I want to trigger stuff, But all right, I think that's everything. If you guys have questions, please let me know. Like I said, I'm going to continue to update the PoB. But yeah, groups in. That's out.